Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but then again I just might. Moving for the kill, squeeze till I choke, then disappear out of sight.
Now to the controversy that has suddenly erupted around the Democratic presidential candidate Joseph Biden, the charge that he has plagiarized parts of his speeches. Today, Biden was forced to take time out from his Judiciary Committee duties to hold a press conference to answer two charges: that he copied part of a paper when in law school and recently adopted as his own quotations from the Kennedys and other politicians. The story surfaced last weekend when the New York Times compared a Biden conclusion in a debate in Iowa to a well-received speech delivered last year by British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock. First Kinnock, then Biden.
Why am I the first Kinnock in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university? Why is Glenys the first woman in her family in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university? Was it because all our predecessors were thick? Did they lack talent? Those people who could sing and play and recite and write poetry? Those people who could make wonderful, beautiful things with their hands? Those people who could dream dreams, see visions? But why didn't they get it? Was it because they were weak? Those people who could work 8 hours underground and then come up and play football? Weak? Those women who could survive 11 childbearings? Were they weak? Does anybody really think that they didn't get what we had because they didn't have the talent or the strength or the endurance or the commitment? Of course not. It was because there was no platform upon which they could stand.
And I started thinking as I was coming over here, why is it that Joe Biden is the first in his family ever to go to a university? Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college? Is it because our fathers and mothers were not bright? Is it because I'm the first Biden in 1,000 generations to get a college and a graduate degree that I was smarter than the rest? Those same people who read poetry and wrote poetry and taught me how to sing verse? Is it because they didn't work hard? My ancestors who worked in the coal mines in northeast Pennsylvania and would come up after 12 hours and play football for 4 hours? No, it's not because they weren't as smart. It's not because they didn't work as hard. It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
Today, Biden moved to confront the controversy that faces his presidential campaign. Jeff Goldman reports.
Reporters packed a Capitol Hill news conference to hear Senator Biden's response to the plagiarism allegations. He was asked if he indeed studied the Kinnock videotape.
The answer is yes. I looked at that tape. I was moved by that tape. We sat down, I turned it on, I said, my Lord, look at this guy. Look at what he is expressing here. And I looked at it once and I didn't have to look at it again. And what I would do out on the stump, I'd say, I saw a tape from Neil Kinnock where he stands there and he's angry. And he looks out at his people and he says, why am I the first Kinnock ever to go to a university? It doesn't take much if you feel that, folks. You don't have to look at that 10 times. I saw that and it was a connect. I mean, I could tell how that man felt. And it's how I feel. It's how I feel about what my party's about, and what I'm about.
Biden also defended his use of unattributed quotations in his campaign speeches.
The fact of the matter is, every time that I have been aware that it has been someone else's quote, I have used it. As a matter of fact, the criticism of me by the press, with good reason, has been in part in this campaign that I quote too many people, that I quote Kennedy all the time, I quote King all the time, I quote Humphrey all the time. So what I'm saying to you is that if and when I've ever quoted anyone without saying this is their quote, it's either because, as I say in some speeches, listen, can you hear the voices? Let the word go forth. I don't quote anybody, everybody knows that. When I haven't attributed it, it's either because, in fact, it's been clearly known by everyone what it is, or I honestly did not know I was quoting somebody else. I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and, in fact, ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student in college.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School. I mean, this guy comes off this whole thing as a flyweight.
Now Biden says Newsweek is right. His memory had failed him.
And I'd be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
Joe Biden was victimized by the truth.
Bye-bye Biden. He may not know it yet, but I think this is going to be very difficult for him to recover.
Is Joe Biden dead meat, yes or no?
I think so.
Bob?
It's in terminal condition.
Terminal. Eleanor?
Yes, unless he comes in third in Iowa.
Morton?
Dying.
I say dead.
I should have said, to paraphrase Neil Kinnock, it's the only time I didn't, and all the times I've ever used it.
But CBS News found a tape of a second instance.
It reappeared in the New York Times with a new charge, that Biden had appropriated a famous litany from the late Robert Kennedy about what the gross national product cannot measure.
It cannot measure the health of our children,
The health of our children,
the quality of our education,
the quality of their education,
the joy of their play,
or the joy of their play.
Joseph Biden admitted today that he committed plagiarism when he was in law school. He said it was a mistake, but that it was unintentional.
He quoted 5 pages of someone else's work without proper citation.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again.
He was given an F.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been dumb.
Biden's critics say he sells himself as a man whose words and visions can inspire a new generation in politics. But if the thoughts, phrases, and visions really belong to others, it's a form of false advertising.
Is it a wise idea, though, to take something that personal, anyway, from another politician and try and appropriate it to your own campaign?
I think it was a stupid thing to appropriate material that was really very personal, that was someone else's.
Most people didn't know who he was, you know, Joe Biden, and now they're going to say, oh, yeah, he's the guy who plagiarized. That's
a lot of people.
Politically, that's devastating. These clips are devastating. He looks like a Joe Biden wind-up doll with somebody else's words coming out.
If they're going to do things that are stupid as well as immoral, then they're probably too dumb to have the job of president.
I don't think any man or woman should run for president unless, number one, they know exactly why they would want to be president, and 2, they can look at the folks out there and say, I promise you, you have my whole heart, my whole soul, my energy, and my passion to do this. And I'd be lying if I said that I knew I was there. I'm being completely honest. Nobody has a right, in my view, to seek that office unless they're willing to give it 110% of who they are. And I am, as I said, I'm optimistic. I'm positive about where we're going. But I find myself, and you understand it, just sometimes it just sort of overwhelms you. And I can't be. I went out to Denver, and I landed at a military base, and I met a whole group of military families, which is not unusual, on a rope line about 100 yards from the aircraft. And about 2/3 were in uniform, the other were family members, and I was thanking them, but I really meant it. This 1% is fighting for 90%, 99% of the rest of us. And I was talking about them being the backbone and sinew of this country, and all of a sudden it was going great. And a guy in the back yells, "Major Bo Biden, Bronze Star, sir, serve them in Iraq." And all of a sudden, I lost it. How could you, I mean, that's not, I shouldn't be saying this. My mom used to say, remember, nobody is better than you, but you're better than nobody. Everybody's equal. My mother really meant it pounded into our heads.
We know there's another person who said that, and that's Thomas Jefferson.
My Bo, my son, before he died, he made me make a promise, for real. It was months before he died, and he knew he was dying because it was, he had stage 4 glioblastoma. There was, no one's made that, just a matter of time. And what happened was that Jill and I would come home on Fridays as vice president and try to have dinner with he and my 2 grandchildren and his wife on Friday nights. And so we were over there, came home on the train, and the Secret Service didn't like me using the train. They'd rather me fly, but it was awfully expensive to do. And, but I'd come home, and we're sitting at dinner, and dinner was over, and he turned to his wife, and he said, "Hal, would you take the kids upstairs? I want to talk to Dad." And Jill had gone straight from the train to the house. She went home to change. We only lived 3/4 of a mile away. And he said, "Dad, I know no one in the world loves me more than you do. But Dad, I promise you, I'm going to be okay. My word." He said, "I'm going to be okay." And he said, "But Dad, promise me you're going to be okay." I said, "Bowie, I'm going to be okay." He said, "Dad, look at me. Look at me, Dad. Give me your word as a Biden, you're going to be okay." And I knew what he meant. He knew that the devastation of losing him, as if I lost my son Hunter or my daughter our daughter Ashley, would be absolutely, would be very hard. And so I said yes. What he wanted me to promise to do, he was worried that what I would do is I'd take care of the family, but he's worried I withdraw. I would go inside because mourning in public is a lot different than being able to mourn in private. And he made me promise to stay engaged. And it wasn't promise me to run for president, Dad. But from the time I've been 18 years old, I've been involved in causes from the civil rights movement to the environment, things that mattered to me. That's all I've done my whole life, is even as a young lawyer, as a public defender. And so for me, the measure is, probably shouldn't say it this way. Every morning I get up, I ask myself, is he proud of me? Am I meeting the requirement that I promised him I would do? Because he and Hunter, who thank God I still have him, he was my soul, Hunter is my heart. It was always about, every time I'd walk out in a debate or anything when we were running as vice president as well, they'd stand there with me, and I got a picture back here of Bo doing it. And he grabbed me by the lapel and said, "Dad, look at me. Dad, remember, home base, home base, home base. Remember, Dad, none of this is worth it. None of this is worth it unless you can be yourself. Just home base. Stick to it." And there's so many people who've gone through what I've gone through and worse. Yeah, I lost my first wife, and my daughter was killed as well. I lost Bo. But I look out there, and I really mean this. Think of all the people you know who get up every morning, having lost more without any of the kind of family, extended family help I've had. And they put one foot in front of the other, and they do it. They just do it. I was just showing someone I'm doing a Zoom thing up in my office. I have a cartoon that was purchased at a Hallmark store. I guess about 15 years ago, my dad was worrying. I was a little feeling sorry for myself. We're talking about something out on the porch, and he left, and there was an event at the house that night, and he came back before it, and he handed me a gold frame. Like it's about, I don't know, 8-10 inches by 3 inches. And there's a cartoon character. I don't read the funny papers much, but my dad did. It was called Hagar the Horrible.
Sure.
The Viking, you know.
Sure.
And there's a picture of his ship crashing on the rocks in the sea and the waves, and there's a lightning coming out of the sky. And you can see the boat sinking. He's standing, his hands up, he says, "Why me, God?" And that's the first frame.
Panel, yeah.
The second frame, the second panel says, a voice from heaven says, "Why not? Why not?" My dad used to say, "Joey, what makes us so different? What makes you so special? It's life." And Barack used to always kid me because I'd use the phrase lots of times in politics and in foreign policy. Life has a way of intruding. And it's intruded on millions of people. Millions of people. We Americans have always been able to take crises and turn them into opportunities.
President Joe Biden's son was discharged from the Navy back in February after sources say he tested positive for cocaine. Hunter Biden has released a statement admitting that he is embarrassed by his actions and that he respects the Navy's decision, but he is not specifically addressing why he was discharged.
President Donald Trump is continuing his attacks on Joe Biden and his son, and now the president says they were involved in corrupt dealings with China. So let's dig into what we do know about the Bidens, China, and their business dealings. In December 2013, then Vice President Joe Biden went on a 6-day trip through Asia, including a stop in China. He was accompanied by his son Hunter Biden and his granddaughter Finnegan Biden. Less than 2 weeks after that trip, BHR Partners was launched, a private equity firm funded in part by Chinese banks. Hunter Biden was an unpaid board member. President Trump and his allies have alleged that that business deal put $1.5 billion in Hunter Biden's pocket. But the former vice president's son didn't have a financial stake in the company until after his father was out of office. It's also worth noting that the negotiations for BHR started months before that December trip to China, something Hunter Biden's attorney confirmed to our partners at PolitiFact.
Amy's exclusive interview with Hunter Biden, son of the former vice president, who's found himself, as you know, at the center of the political firestorm over the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Amy.
Good morning again, Robin. Yeah, this was a wide-ranging interview where no questions were off limits. And when I sat down with Hunter Biden at his home in Los Angeles, he opened up about his relationship with his father, his feelings about President Trump and his children, and his tough battle with addiction.
By the way, whatever happened to Hunter? Where the hell is he?
It went to Hunter Biden.
It was Hunter Biden.
Hunter Biden.
Former Vice President Joe Biden's life hit a tragic chord in May 2015 when his oldest son, Beau Biden, died from brain cancer at age 46. Mourning alongside Joe was Beau's wife of 13 years, Hallie Biden, and Beau's younger brother, Hunter Biden.
A stunning announcement from former Vice President Joe Biden. The widow of his late son, Beau, Hallie Biden, is in a romantic relationship with his other son, Hunter.
A surprising headline from the Biden family.
In a statement, Biden is giving his blessing to the jaw-dropping romance. We are all lucky that Hunter and Hallie found each other as they were putting their lives together again after such sadness. They have mine and Jill's full and complete support, and we are happy for them. This is a devastated Hallie at the 2015 funeral for her husband, Beau, who died of brain cancer. Her brother-in-law, Hunter, is grieving beside her. President Obama gave the eulogy and embraced Hallie.
Beau Biden was an original.
Hunter is now separated from his wife, Kathleen. They have 3 children. Explosive divorce documents obtained by Inside Edition say she asked him to leave and allege he spent extravagantly on drugs, alcohol, prostitutes, strip clubs, and gifts for women with whom he has sexual relations. In a statement about his new relationship, Hunter says, Hallie and I are incredibly lucky to have found the love and support we have for each other in such a difficult time, and that's been obvious to the people who love us most. We've been so lucky to have family and friends who have supported us every step of the way. Beau Biden's tragic death is the reason his dad decided not to run for president.
My son was better than me, and he was better than me in almost every way.
Beau introduced his dad at the 2008 Democratic Convention.
I'm Beau Biden, and Joe Biden is my dad.
As brothers, Beau and Hunter were bonded by tragedy. They survived the terrible 1972 accident when a truck plowed into their car, killing their mom, Joe Biden's first wife, and their baby sister. Hunter spoke about it at his brother's funeral.
I remember my brother, who was 1 year and 1 day older than me, holding my hand, staring into my eyes, saying, "I love you." I am absolutely enveloped in love of my family. I certainly hope that there is no negative political ramifications of this. I think that the truth always wins.
Do you think you're a distraction right now to your father's campaign?
No, personally, myself, I'm not necessarily a distraction to his campaign. I'm never a distraction to my dad. But as it relates to actually going and being on stage with him, this is not a family business. And what they do is they create just an enormous amount of noise. I have to then answer questions about accusations made.
Out of all the reasons for Hunter and Hallie split, the June 2019 report that Hunter fathered a child with a woman named London Roberts might take the cake. Roberts' legal rep told the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, "This is a parenting and child support issue between her and Mr. Biden. She really does not want this to be a media spectacle. She does not want this to affect Joe Biden's campaign. She just wants this baby to get financial support from the baby's father."
My dad doesn't have to defend me. My dad only has to love me. And my dad loves me unequivocally. Look, I know that after being able to get up after Beau died, say whatever the hell they want to say about me.
Hunter denied Roberts' allegations in August 2019, just 1 year after the child was reportedly born. Hunter was allegedly identified as the baby's father with a DNA test. Roberts claims her baby was conceived when she was taking classes at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., which is close to Hunter's former home in Maryland. This would have been in November or December 2017.
I've been through some real stuff.
What should people know about Hunter Biden that they don't know?
Like every single person that I've ever known, I have fallen and I've gotten up. I've done estimable things and things that have been in my life that I regret. Every single one of those things has brought me exactly to where I am right now, which is probably the best place I've ever been in my life.
In and out of rehab 7-8 times.
Say it nicer to me. Sought treatment for an issue like
Sought
most
treatment
people.
for substance abuse issues
so
7 or 8
insensitive.
times. I'm so sorry.
I don't know. It's making me emotional.
Why do you think you're getting emotional?
Because I'm really proud of being an American. I hope that a lot of people that that have a chance at redemption here stand up for what is right.
In May 2019, Hunter got hitched in Los Angeles to a South African woman named Melissa Cohen, according to TMZ.
He's wonderful and caring and kind, and he very much cares about his country.
It's not yet clear how the lovebirds met or whether the rest of the Biden family attended the wedding, but it looks like Cohen's family approves of the union. Melissa's brother, Garen Cohen, wrote to Page 6 in an email, "We are all very happy for Melissa and wish her and Hunter all the best for the future. Melissa is an amazing person, and we all love and adore her dearly. Looking forward to meeting and getting to know my new brother-in-law."
President Obama and Beau Biden's brother Hunter and sister Ashley celebrated the 46-year-old as a father, son, brother, and soldier.
Beau's was the hand everyone reached for in their time of need.
He was the constant anchor for me, my brothers, our father, and our mother. He was our protector, our mediator, the captain of our lives.
He did in 46 years what most of us couldn't do in 146. Here was a sign of an incredible family who brushed away the possibility of privilege for the harder, better reward of earning his own way. Here was a soldier who dodged glory and exuded true humility. A prosecutor who defended the defenseless. The rare politician who collected more fans than foes. And the rare public figure who prioritized his private life above all else.
Beau Biden left behind a wife, Hallie, and 2 children, Hunter and Natalie.
This morning, Joe Biden is walking back this message to black undecided voters.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community. I would love to see.
Take a look at my record, man.
Hours later, the former VP backtracked.
The bottom line of all this is perhaps I was much too cavalier.
What I don't hear from the Democrat leadership today are people speaking out against Vice President Biden's comments.
That Chuck Graham, state senator's here. Chuck, stand up. Chuck, let me see you. Oh, God love you. What am I talking about? I tell you what, you're making everybody else stand up, though, pal. Thank you very, very much. I tell you what, stand up for Chuck.
As Barack says, a 3-letter word, jobs. J-O-B-S, jobs.
Joe, you want to administer the oath?
Am I doing this again?
For the
senior staff. All right.
A number of the cabinet members have already.
My memory is not as good as Justice Roberts, Chief Justice Roberts. Does anyone have the? No, I.
His mom lived in Long Island for 10 years or so. God rest her soul. And although your mom's still alive as your dad passed. God bless her soul. I got to get this straight. Now is the time to heed the timeless advice from Teddy Roosevelt. Speak softly and carry a big stick. End of quote. I promise you, the president has a big stick. I promise you. All men and women created by you know the thing.
The Me Too movement has forced a cultural reckoning around the issue of sexual violence and harassment against women in America.
And so we have to just change the culture, period, and keep punching at it and punching at it and punching at it. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
And he cut off a 6-foot length of chain. He folded up, he said, you walk out with that chain. And you walk to the car and say, you may cut me, man, but I'm going to wrap this chain around your head. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap. Not only a great friend, but a fierce advocate. Lady Gaga has been the voice for people who have been forgotten and people who have been abused. Until it happens to you, well, it happened to her. And she's shown enormous courage. And we want to make it real clear. It's on us, it's on everyone to intervene, to stop abuse when they see it and when they hear about it, to intervene.
I am a sexual assault survivor, and I know the effects, the aftermath, the trauma, psychological, physical, mental. It can be terrifying, waking up every day feeling unsafe in your own body. But we're here to remind you that it's important to reach out to someone in your life that you can trust, and to know that they will be there to help you. There will be someone to listen. Because you know what? It's on us.
You're getting too old. You're getting too old and too lovely. You ready? Are you getting in this picture? Okay. Like you have a beautiful sister, keep the boys away from your sister. That's the job.
Joe Biden on defense after a former Nevada state lawmaker said he made her feel uneasy during an interaction in 2014. Lucy Flores first made the allegation in an essay for The Cut on Friday, detailing the encounter with the former vice president at a campaign rally in Nevada as she ran for lieutenant governor.
Joe Biden put his hands on my shoulders, get up very close to me from behind, lean in,
smell my hair, and then plant a slow kiss on the top of my head.
Okay. That sounded super creepy.
Friday hit a low. Soon after we sneaked across the rooftops in pursuit of the moon. All our libido leaking through our fingers and lips.
Another woman making an accusation that former Vice President Joe Biden inappropriately touched her. Not sexually, not violently, but in her view, inappropriately. The Hartford Courant newspaper reports that at a 2009 fundraiser, Amy Lapos said the vice president put his hand on her neck and pulled her in to rub noses. Lapos tells the Courant she was afraid he was going to kiss her.
It's an invasion of personal space.
In my many years on the campaign trail and in public life, I have offered countless handshakes, hugs, expressions of affection, support, and comfort. And not once, never, did I believe I acted inappropriately. If it is suggested I did so, I will listen respectfully, but it was never my intention.
There are hugs where you just throw up your arms and go for it, and then there are hugs that keep going and going and going. Joe Biden wouldn't let Hillary go as they met on the tarmac at Scranton Airport. About 4 seconds into the hug, they semi-disengage. Nothing to see here, right? Wrong, because the vice president wouldn't unhand Hillary for almost 16 seconds.
Notice how many times she tries to tap out. She lets it go, he does not. She tap out. Nope, she's just, no, he's still holding on. Okay, second tap out, for God's sake, Joe, you gotta let go.
This latest awkward hug would not have been microanalyzed if it hadn't been for all the other overly handy Biden moments. Critics collect them. Times when he gently rearranges a young girl's hair and whispers in her ear, then rearranges some more. There's nothing pervy here. The VP knows he's on camera at these swearing-in ceremonies, and the parents are right there as he leans in for a kiss. The VP is known as a close talker. He even does it to the president. Perhaps his most famous hands-on moment came when he put his hands on the wife of Defense Secretary Ash Carter.
I've got a lot of thanks to give out here.
Conservatives panned it.
This is the creepiest thing.
And so did some liberals.
No, that ain't right, man. That ain't right. Why are you appeared to smell her hair?
The former congressional staffer who is accusing former Vice President Joe Biden of sexual assault is speaking out in a new interview. Tara Reid opened up about her alleged experiences on Capitol Hill back when Biden was a senator and about who she told. CNN political correspondent MJ Lee has the breaking details. And MJ, what did she say?
Well, Brooke, for the most part, she reiterated what she has previously told CNN and other outlets. She described this alleged sexual assault by Joe Biden in 1993 when she was working as a Senate aide on Capitol Hill back when Joe Biden was a senator.
If he's watching this, what do you want to say to him?
Please step forward and be held accountable. You should not be running on character for the President of the United States.
Now, Reid also said that she is willing to go under oath and is willing to be cross-examined. But when she was asked whether she is willing to take a polygraph test, she said she would if Joe Biden were also willing to do so. And she also said in this interview, "I am not a criminal." Last year, Tara Reid came out and said that she had had physical interactions with Joe Biden when she was an aide in the Senate that had made her feel uncomfortable. But at that time, she was only talking about sexual harassment, and it's only this year that she publicly came out for the first time and said that actually she was also sexually assaulted by Joe Biden. Now, a local California paper got a hold of 1996 divorce records between Tara Reade and her now ex-husband. CNN has since obtained those records as well. And in those records, her ex-husband says that he met Tara Reade in the spring of 1993 in Washington, D.C. And when they were dating on multiple occasions, he says that Reade said that there was a problem that she was having at work regarding sexual harassment in U.S. Senator Joe Biden's office. And he also said in this document that this event had a very traumatic effect on Reade and that she is still sensitive and affected by it today. Now, I should also note, and this is important, Reade has also said that she verbally complained at the time to supervisors about sexual harassment, though not about sexual assault. CNN has spoken with all three of those former supervisors of Tara Reade's, and they all said unequivocally that this complaint was never brought to them and that they were never aware of any kind of sexual harassment allegation against Joe Biden in the many years that they all worked for him.
Most people who watch things like this are under the impression the only thing we're looking for is the answer when someone answers a question. That's why you always see the person asking the question, then it cuts to the person answering the question. This is a great interview because we see both sides of it. What we're interested in is the person reacting to the question and then answering the question. So as we see them being asked the question, that's just as important or maybe more sometimes than just hearing what the answer is and watching them answer. So in this situation, we're getting to see Mika ask the question as Joe answers, as Joe reacts to it, as she asks the question, and then he answers. So that's great. So let's start off by watching the first question that she asked Joe Biden in this conversation.
Did you sexually assault Tara Reade?
No, it is not true. I'm saying unequivocally, it never happened. And it didn't. It never happened.
As he answered the question, we saw an increase in blink rate, and we didn't see anger, which we would typically see in my experience as doing interviews. If you accuse an innocent person or ask an innocent person if they do something, we see a little bit of anger and less composure.
It looks rehearsed. It looks practiced. It looks emphatic. Everything is tight. It looks like he's regurgitating something.
Yeah, I agree. It's very contained, rehearsed in that sense, buttoned down. One thing that interests me, it never ever happened, and it didn't.
And it didn't.
And it didn't. Well, you suspect that I might think that you were not telling me the truth the first time around?
One thing that bothered me was the part where when she asked him, he's supposed to be saying that never happened. When she says, did it happen? He says, he shakes his head yes as he says no. Paul Ekman, that's one of his biggies that he always points out. So that bugged me right out of the gate.
You know, what we start to learn is how well does that product work under stress? How well does his training stand up during this? I would say already out of the gate, it never ever happened and it didn't. I don't think he ever rehearsed and putting and it didn't afterwards. That's his unconscious mind going, oh, I got to be really emphatic.
Mark, I don't think you would coach your G7 leaders to say.
You can coach them, and then there's what happens under the lights and the stress and the stress of the interview.
Do you remember her? Do you remember any types of complaints that she might have made?
I don't remember any type of complaint she may have made. It was 27 years ago, and I don't remember, nor does anyone else that I'm aware of. And the fact is that I don't remember. I don't remember any complaint ever having been made.
The thing that jumps out at me, one of the biggies is the half shoulder, that little half shrug, real quick.
Yeah, uncertainty.
No, just I'm impressed. Like, you guys are really good at picking up those shrugs. When you were sharing notes about this earlier, I was looking at all these shrugs, going, "Wow, you're really picking this stuff up." So no, my hat is just off.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
Well, we have immediately after the cough, we have something called a positional shift, which is where the butt moves in the chair. And that's typically an anxiety response. Second, as he's emphatically denying it, we see another increase in blink rate, which deviates wildly from his normal average blink rate. I sampled 9 other interviews today, and his average blink rate was an 11. So we went up to about a 27 during this emphatic denial here again, followed by the shoulder shrug. And one of the most roundabout, strange answers I've heard in a very long time. I've interviewed at least 3 people in my life, and I've never heard an explanation like that.
This is not just body language we're doing. This is deception. We're talking about the way a human being communicates. That distancing and rambling is a way to let your brain scramble and think. And if you're a quick thinker, it can cover a lot of ground. Mark, I'm sure you've used something like this, but I always call those interjection words. And you can build entire sentences that interject while you think.
Well, I didn't say no. Yeah, I said I have no knowledge of anybody else who has any knowledge of this.
Mm-hmm. It's this, right? He's almost, I call this the matador, constantly flipping around, spinning your cape to make the bull pass you. He's just not as agile a matador as he once was. He's quite
Anthony Weiner, master of that.
Really good at that. Yeah.
Absolute master.
Yeah, it's a master of that.
Have you or your campaign, have you reached out to her?
No, I have not reached out to her. It was 27 years ago. This never happened. And when she first made the claim, we made it clear that it never happened. And that's as simple as that.
In some cases, it's because she calls him Mr. Vice President and reminds him of who he is. In other cases, he just is cognizant. The other one I noticed is never happened, never happened, never happened. He has a mantra he's repeating, and you'll hear it throughout. However, he's still entangling that long, drawn-out answer to a short question.
What we're seeing is long, protracted answers that don't necessarily need to be there. Have you reached out to her? No.
That if I ask you, do you sell drugs? You're going to say, no.
What are you seeing in that background, Mark?
The thing that's very, very visible there is the football. My guess is that's about fair play winner. One thing that isn't shown in this particular interview, but does show up in some others, is the folded flag.
Your Senate documents at the University of Delaware were supposed to go public, and then they were resealed. The access was changed. I know that you're saying any HR complaints could be in the National Archives, but why not reveal your Senate documents that are being held in Delaware? I know there's 1,800 plus boxes, but if she believes and she alleges that the complaints may be hidden there, why not strive for complete transparency? Why was the access to those documents sealed up when they were supposed to be revealed?
Well, they weren't supposed to be revealed. I gave them the university. The university said it's going to take them time to go through all the boxes. They said it wouldn't be, and that wouldn't be before 2020 that occurred, or 2021. I can't remember the year they said. But look, a record like this can only be one place. It would not be at the University of Delaware. My archives do not contain personal files. My archives contain documents, and when I say personnel files. They don't contain any personnel files. They are public records, my speeches, my papers, my position papers. And if that document existed, it would be stored in the National Archives, where documents from the office she claims to have filed her complaint with are stored. That's where they are stored. The Senate controls those archives. So I'm asking the Secretary of the Senate today to identify whether any such document exists. If it does, make it public.
If something isn't in the place it should be, it doesn't exist. Now, that's his piece of logic. And if you can't find that report in a specific place, then there is no evidence. That isn't logic. There's something he would prefer people don't see or hear about in those, I would suggest.
You know, this is a thing he's been trying to avoid, is this Delaware Papers, it feels like, in this whole show.
You can go back to the beginning of this video and see some really strong chin boss movement here. And this is the grief or shame muscle. We see it strong right there. And then the moment that the interviewer says she alleges, you see that contempt smile facial expression. He shows the contempt very strongly on the right side of his face. The moment that the accuser is brought up, that Tara is brought up. I had to watch that video 5 or 6 times on slow motion. And the difference in his regular smile versus that clip was that this part of the face, which is heavily involved in contempt, was involved tenfold more in that expression.
Right, but there are claims and concerns and reports in Business Insider, and she claims that possibly a complaint or some sort of record of this might be at the University of Delaware. So, for complete transparency, why not push for the release of any documents with Tara Reade's name on them, whether it's at the University of Delaware or the National Archives?
First of all, let's get this straight. There are no personnel documents. You can't do that. You wouldn't, for example, if you worked with me or I worked for you and you had my income tax returns, you had my whatever. They're private documents. They're not for the. They don't get put out in the public. So they're not part of the public record. That in fact is that any senator or vice president or president has in their documents. Look, there was one place that she could file the complaint. And that office at the time was all those records from that office are in the archives, and they're controlled by the Senate. That's where personnel documents would be if they exist. That's where the complaint would be if it exists.
Ooh, boy, she's getting mad. She's and you hear her breathing heavy there at the end there as well.
Biden now is going to this idea of, look, you just don't get it. You just don't understand. You don't understand how this works. You can't go and find something where it should never be.
He did something I've seen in interrogation many, many times, and I'm going to say this and you can edit it out, but my bullshit meter gets pegged when somebody does this. As if they can't understand what you're saying. They're squinting to reduce the amount of data they're taking in. They're tilting their head. And they're going, what? That can't be. That almost every time I interrogated someone preceded a big lie and me uncovering that they were in fact doing exactly what we thought. He does it twice in this video.
That little squint I've seen at least a couple of times. You can see the interviewer, Mika's just getting more and more incredulous. And her squinting in response to his answer is starting to go up. And if you look at the books from the 1970s, it'll say people who break eye contact are more likely to lie. That's not true. And I think everybody here will agree with that.
Oh, yeah, it's 100% true. Yeah, that's one of the first things they talk about.
And finally, towards the end, when you see him kind of adjust posture a little bit, you see the humerus bones pull in towards his body. And if there's one thing that fear does to our bodies, it makes us protect arteries. Even the facial expression of fear, the first muscles to move are the meatoclastoid muscles down here, and they actually move in front of the carotid artery. These arms move back into the body to protect the brachial artery. So we see a little bit of a withdrawal of the humerus bone squeezing into the body there.
When a person is so focused on you that nothing else matters because they're trying to figure out whether you're perceiving them as positive or negative. That's all that stuff allows so many people to get away with lies. It's just insane.
As we
look, this is a very. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Please. No, that's all.
As we await for the records from the National Archives, are you absolutely certain? Are you absolutely positive there is no record of any complaint by Tara Reade against you?
I am absolutely positive that no one that I'm aware of ever has been made aware of any complaint, a formal complaint made by or a complaint by Tara Reade against me at the time this allegedly happened 27 years ago, or until I announced for I guess it was in April or May of this year. I know of no one who's aware that any complaint was made.
Yeah, this is my favorite of the entire thing. He took a yes or no question and answered with about a 27-word answer that is just, if you heard, it's cadenced as if he's practiced it, and at the same time bungled and a mess. It's a Faustian deal. Hey, Satan, can I have X? Well, sure, let's make a contract. His blink rate is up. Everything he's saying is protecting his back.
You can train people how to spin, but if they spin too much.
I teach, if someone removes you from the answer twice, there's a high likelihood of deception.
The training of somebody like this, what we might do is to create some of that distancing, or what we might call nested loops. So interruptions, non sequiturs. But then at the end of that, and we'd only usually do 3 rounds, at the end of that, you'd make a very clear statement.
And I teach how to use confusion in a kind of a weaponized way.
It is a disaster on a stick.
So during confusion, I teach that the brain acts much the same way. And if there's a logical statement after that, like Mark said, we'll accept it. We'll grab onto it. The brain does it.
And he's been doing double talk for decades. He's a senator for how many decades? So he knows how to say something with no content. But this is not the time to say something with no content.
It's starting to get a little bit hairy for him.
So personnel records aside, are you certain there was nothing about Tara Reade in those records? And if so,
I am absolutely certain.
Why not approve a search of her name in those records?
Approve a search of her name?
Yes, and reveal anything that might be related to Tara Reade in the University of Delaware records.
There is nothing. They wouldn't. They're not there. And if I don't understand the point you're trying to make.
The point I'm trying to make is that
there are no personnel records by definition.
The point I'm trying to make is that you are approving and actually calling for a search of the National Archives records of anything pertaining to Tara Reade. I'm asking why not do the same in the University of Delaware records, which have raised questions because they were supposed to be revealed to the public and then they were sealed for a longer period of time. Why not do it for both sets of records?
Because the material in the University of Delaware has no personnel files, but it does have a lot of confidential conversations that I had with the president about a particular issue, that I had with the heads of state of other places, that would not be something that would be revealed while I was in public office or while I was seeking public office. It just stands to reason, to the best of my knowledge, no one else has done that either.
I'm just talking about her name, not anybody else in those records. A search for that.
When there's an extremely awkward silence right there, and then she takes a big inhale like she's about to talk, and then Joe Biden's quiet, and then she waits for him to talk.
Oh,
and he goes, Mary.
A search for that.
Did you guys remember this, seeing this? He goes,
yeah. Silence is a powerful tool.
Yeah, I mean, she uses it really well. There's a standoff around that a little bit later on in this interview where they both go quiet. And of course, Mika has to come in with something because, advertisers are paying for stuff to happen in the news, not for nothing to happen. And just so you know, it's again, one of the techniques we teach politicians is if you don't want to answer the question, just do nothing. And the interviewer has to fill the space.
We always say people leak what they're thinking. Maybe there's the smoking gun why he doesn't want that done. This is a culmination of a 50-year political career.
So if you strip this clip down to the audio, I would personally still score it as deceptive.
If you could speak directly to Tara Reid about her claims or anything, what would you say?
I would. This never ever happened. I don't know what is motivating her. I don't know what's behind any of it. But it's irrelevant. It never happened. It never happened. Period. I'm not going to start questioning her motive. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to go after Tara Reid for saying these things. It's simple. What are the facts? Do any of the things she said, do they add up?
What she does with her question is to put him in a perceptual positioning situation. You know, if you had her here, what would you say to her? And so you go into an imaginative state right then. When you go into an imaginative state, you get potentially more emotional. And so what the interviewer is suggesting is that he get into an emotional state right now. I think he was just about to do that. I think he was just about to do an enactment of being with Reid and talking to her, and he stops himself. I would put my life down that there's something there. Something
he doesn't want getting out, and he wants a cap on that. I agree with you. That's the one I would put, because you see it in his recognition when they first bring it up.
Maybe it wasn't the complaint about that part of it. It was about something else. All right, let's kind of wrap this up. Each person get about 15, 20 seconds of what they think about what happened and about what we saw in this and how things went. And Mark, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so watch out for compliance when you're trying to be influenced and persuaded by people. Watch out for it stands to reason or it's just logical. Usually when that's said, it doesn't stand to reason and there's been no logic involved whatsoever. Just watch out for that.
Greg?
Yeah, I'm a baseliner. All of us are. Look for a baseline and a deviation. When something changes, whatever that is, if a person always does this and suddenly does something else, it means something. So when a person stares at you too intently versus eye movement casually and looking at you, that means something. Don't fall back on the crossed arms and the things you learned in high school psychology because they're just not true.
Chase?
All right. Pay attention if you're in sales or you're a parent or you talk to humans anytime. Pay attention to those upper bones in the arm. Once they start squeezing in, or if somebody's got their elbows in a table and their arms come in, especially if you're in sales, you know immediately that you've got some work to do.
Excellent. And I would say when you ask someone a question, make sure you get the answer, especially if it's a yes or no question. Make sure you get a yes or a no specifically in there. And pay attention to how they approach that and the things they say without saying yes or no. You may have the feeling they said yes or they said no, but listen. It's so important to listen to what they said and how they're saying it. I'm Scott Rouse. I'm a body language expert and analyst, and I train law enforcement in the military in interrogation and body language.
I'm Greg Hartley. I'm a former Army interrogator, interrogation instructor, resistance to interrogation instructor, anti-terror, a whole lot of that other stuff. And then I'm a body language and behavior guy. I've written 10 books about body language and behavior.
Hi, I'm Chase Hughes. I did 20 years in the U.S. military and got out. And now I teach interrogation and behavior profiling to businesses and law firms around the world. I teach courses in enhanced persuasion and influence, and I'm a trial consultant.
Hi there, I'm Mark Bowden. I'm an expert in human behavior and body language, help people all over the world to stand out, win trust, gain credibility every time they communicate, including some of the leaders of the G7.
And we have a special guest today, Tanya Ryman. Tanya, tell us about yourself.
Hi there. So I am Tanya Ryman. Yes, I'm the author of 3 books, all on nonverbal communication as well as manipulation.
All right, well, let's get right to it. Today we're going to be talking about Tara Reid and her interview with Megyn Kelly, and we're going to talk about what we see happening in that. Now, as we go through this, keep in mind, as professionals, as we do this for a living, there's no politics here for us. We don't lay on one side or the other when it comes to tell what we see. If we see what we think is deception, we'll say we think this is deception because of this, this, and this. If we see something we think is truth, we'll say we think it's true because of this, this, and this. There's showing cues of being honest or truthful. So let's start with the first clip. It's fairly short.
At some point that spring of 1993. Correct. Where you say Senator Biden and you had an experience in a hallway in one of the Capitol buildings. Can you describe what happened that day?
Yes, this was during that time where I was kind of frozen out, so I was kind of surprised. But Marianne came rushing in with this bag, like a duffel bag or gym bag, she called it, and said, hurry, the senator's already on his way. Just follow him and try to catch him before the Capitol and give him this. He wants his bag. I remember going down the Russell Building floors, and so I don't know if I was in the first floor or the basement, but there's corridors that lead to the Capitol and that kind of thing, and I was trying to catch up with him. And
this would have been on a weekday?
Okay, Chase, what do you got?
So right away we have the large inhale before she starts talking. Could be nothing, could be something. We would need to go to the baseline. One of the things I would think here is that she's a little bit exasperated, and she's told this so many times, and I think she's nervous. This is probably the biggest interview she's done in a while. And right out of the gate, we have her start to use these feeling type of words where she's describing things in sensory terms, where she says, I was frozen out, not cast out or kicked out or voted out. It was frozen out. So we're starting to hear her use some of these feeling words, which may come in later. And everything else looked pretty honest to me. I look for truth signals. I know Greg and Scott, we come at it from different angles. I search for truth signals and the lack of truth signals. And this one had mostly truth.
Yeah, so I'm going to pick up on what Chase is saying there around the metaphor used there, which is frozen out. So obviously, ice doesn't actually exist in this situation. It's an idea of something else is imposed on an emotion. And she also talks earlier on and later on about iciness as well. Now, both of these, iciness and frozen out of something, means she's talking about a social situation. I just want to kind of lay that down, that there's already talk here that this isn't necessarily about individuals, it's about groups. We're social mammals, so every time we think we're talking about individuals, we're not. We're talking about members of groups. And I just want people to keep that in their mind as we go through this, that when we think we're seeing an individual, we're seeing a member of a group, and they feel either part of a group or not part of a group. And if they don't feel part of a group, that can cause a huge amount of animosity and emotion. So I'm just going to kind of lay that down as a bit of foreshadowing.
And this would have been on a weekday? Yes. And I remember like my heels, like my legs hurting a little, and like, there was just from walking really fast. I remember things like that. And then I saw him at a distance. He was talking to someone, and they walked away the other direction. And then he greeted me. He remembered my name. And then I said, here you go, Senator. I handed him the bag. And it happened very quickly. I remember being pushed up against the wall and thinking the first thought I had was, where's the bag? Which is an absurd thought, but that's what I thought.
All right, so right out of the gate, this bugs me because I can tell she's been coached. She's using terms that you have people use when you train them to say, to recall, to tell their story again. She doesn't use the I remember, those two words anywhere except when she's talking about this specific thing. And within a 2-minute period, she says, I remember 7 times, and then once more later on. she's coming to stopping points where she has sections. She tells the story in sections, and she comes to a point and her voice goes down and she stops and it starts again.
A lot of times when we're looking at people, we're thinking, oh, they're coached, they're too positive. Here, you can actually see the coaching, and that's discouraging for me.
But when she's moving her eyes around, that's a good sign. That means she's accessing something.
Right.
Interestingly for me, I call that I'm just a girl showing vulnerability when they uncover their ear.
Yeah,
you do it all the time. She does it very effectively. And honestly, I think this is her starting her story, because I think she's on the hero's path, as I've told you guys before. She uncovers her ear. She starts to tell you about something that's real to her, and she's using memory. She's accessing something. I don't think she's lying. I think she's just starting to personalize herself.
Yeah.
All right, so we open the clip. We've got 2 more sensory descriptions right out of the gate. Her feet are hurting. She remembers being pushed up against the wall. So more sensory descriptions of the scene. And once it's in keeping, and I'm in an interrogation, and Greg and Scott probably know this. If it's truthful, and if someone's recalling something in sequence, we'll continue to see that sensory reference. So they'll continue. They may deviate a little bit, but we'll continue to see that throughout the rest of the conversation. She doesn't show emotion or recall when she's saying, I remember. So that tells me that there's some coaching involved. And another reason that she could be told to say that is that if the facts are ever brought into question, if somebody's coaching her, one of us is coaching her, if the facts are brought into question, I didn't say it happened exactly like this. I said I remembered it like this.
You just hit on something. Several times she said something like physical. It was a physical, and she pulls herself back, and that was something that I keyed on too. I'm like, when you do that, that's not something you get coached on. That's literally, that's just built in. It's an inane thing. You go, I pushed on, poof, and then your body moves backwards. So I did see that as well, and I thought that was important.
He had one hand underneath my shirt, and the other hand, I had a skirt on, and he went down my skirt and then went up. And I remember I was up almost on my tippy toes. And when he went inside the skirt, he was talking to me at the same time, and he was leaning into me, and I pulled this way away from his head, I remember. And so he was kissing my neck area, and he whispered, did I want to go somewhere else, in a low voice. He said some other things. I can't remember everything he said. But he said something vulgar. And
may I ask what?
For you watching this, if we start blinking more often, so blink rate is just how often, not really how fast. So if our blink rate goes up, that's typically a stress indicator. And the newest, most recent research on deception shows that blink rate drops during the lie and has a sharp increase after the deceptive point. And we see this. She's reliving something that was a stressful event, and the blink rate confirms it. And we see lots of movement here as well with the chin boss as she's starting to recall some of this stuff. So this was a genuine statement.
When you see the blink rate increase because of stress, I think it may be related to the fact she's now divulging more detail than she's divulged anywhere else. And we're back to that. I've got an inject, I've got information, I'm worried about. Watch the hypnotic gaze. She's looking right at her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because she's afraid of how this is going to be perceived. There is fear. There is fight or flight. I guarantee you, if you could test hormones right now, you would get all kinds of stress hormones in this case.
So my guess is some people, maybe watching this right now, maybe what you're thinking is, but she's acting. She's putting on a good show. I've got some experience around this. I've trained actors all over the world, and some of them have won Oscars. So I know really good actors, and I know how they do what they do, and I can help them do what they do. To be able to drift into that emotional recall as she just did then, and do it when it just kind of flows in and then suddenly peaks, that's super hard to do as an actor. Most actors, even really good ones, will actually steer past the emotion. It's too awful for the body to take. And what they'll tend to do, amateurs or even good enough professionals, they will avoid the pain. The pain for her flows up and then peaks immediately. And after that, she wouldn't be in control of that. If it's a real feeling, she'd have to try really hard to suppress it, or it would just come. So if she's acting, she's beyond the capability of most really good actors. It's the real thing.
He said, "I want to fuck you." And he said it low, and I was pushing away. And I remember my knee hurting because our knees, he had opened my legs with his knee and our knees caps clashed. So I felt like this sharp pain. His fingers were inside of my private area, my vagina, and it wasn't, there was no small talk, there was no like precept, it was just sudden, and it was happening like that. And he was saying that to me, saying those things to me, and I was pulling away.
I remember that. It's one of two things. Either you don't want to show what you're feeling, you don't want the world to know that you are potentially exaggerating, being deceptive, or feel anxiety. But on top of that, it's also to keep out the negative feelings that you're experiencing at that moment.
Have you been to a film and it's taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people to work out what's happening in a specific moment of a scene? On the whole, what an actor is trying to do is tell you a really clear narrative and a really, really clear emotional journey that flows really smoothly. It may be like a bit of a roller coaster, but it's very clear where we are and what's happening. Look, if this is absolutely made up and fully rehearsed, then it's a really bad job of making stuff up and fully rehearsing it, because it's quite confusing emotionally what's going on at the moment. And people are pretty confusing, or they're pretty complex. So there's a level of complexity here that anybody who is interested in putting on a good story and rehearsing it well, there's a level of complexity here that they wouldn't be trying to achieve. They'd be trying to achieve something way simpler to understand, way better and more smoothly delivered.
I watched this thing 4 times before I finally said, okay, I believe her mostly, because I kept seeing this piece where she would hypnotizingly stare when she's telling information before I started to analyze that she's also accessing until she comes to it. And then look at the story that she's told her entire life. That's repetitive. That's that left auditory cue, right? I'm listening. I'm paying attention to something I've said, something I've repeated over and over and over, my favorite piece of poetry. It's how you memorize things. And then this focus, and this is what makes it difficult. The staring focus and no accessing cues makes it awkward. It makes you start to think, why is she not accessing information? But then when you go back and think about, she is concerned that she will not be believed. And this might be fact. It might be what she remembers. It might be what she's dredged up in the past few days as a memory, but it might be exactly how she remembers it. She just has never said it. And the perception of being mistaken for a liar is there.
My mind was racing. And in that moment, I knew this was really bad. I knew it was more than just like the assault. It was really bad. He was then angry, right? And I could feel, it wasn't like yelling angry, but like that hostility build. And he pulled back and he was just looking at me directly. And he pointed his finger at me and he said, "You're nothing to me." And I think that's the hardest thing. And I know people talk about the assault, but those words stayed with me my whole life. It was cruel. So when he saw me obviously start to get upset by what he said, he took me by the shoulders and he just kind of shook me, almost like, and said, "You're okay, you're all right."
There is some coaching in here. I have no doubt. But if I'm giving her a truth score instead of a deception score, I'm giving somewhere around 80% here. I would bet my reputation is genuine. That is hard to fake.
He picked up the gym bag, he turned around and he walked away and he never looked back.
It sounds like it happened in an instant.
I would say under 3 minutes.
So if you asked me, how long did it take me to make coffee this morning? Is your question about me putting the water in, waiting for the machine to warm up, waiting for my cup to fill up, or waiting for me to take the first sip.
You analyze too much, man.
So I would say, I don't know, 2 minutes. So I might do the same thing. And second, I think that she's experiencing the same thing. Is it from the time you saw him first to the time you sat down on the steps afterward? And the question should have been, how long was the assault?
This is a piece of news entertainment. And we've always got to keep that in mind. And news has an agenda. And the people who show up for the news have an agenda. And we've always got to keep that in mind. It isn't about necessarily facts and truth. And, never let facts get in the way of a good story.
They say, well, she subjected herself to cross-examination. Would you do that?
Absolutely.
They also point out that she took a polygraph controlled by someone on her team. Is that something you want to do?
I'm not a criminal. Joe Biden should take the polygraph. What I would say is that they're not admissible into court, 1. 2, Blasey Ford took one. Is that true? I believe that's what I understand. But what kind of precedent does that set for survivors of violence? Does that mean we're presumed guilty and we all have to take polygraphs? So I'm just putting it out there. So I will take one if Joe Biden takes one. But I'm not a criminal.
Go ahead,
You know
Greg.
what? Yeah, so for me, the one here, this closes the deal for me. I've been on the fence until today, until I was watching and had that epiphany watching her body language. I've been occasionally, I'm not sure. But when somebody says absolutely, and it's not just an absolutely with her mouth, it's emphatic. She uses her chin and her head, and she illustrates to both oath and to cross-examination. Great, beautiful. And the word criminal, I often associated with, I'm not a crook. And if you've been coached not to call him a criminal, because that's not a really smart thing to do to a guy with his amount of power and influence, and B, might be next president of the United States.
That for me sold it. That entire process of there's less than a half second before she answers both of those questions. It's direct, firm, and confident. And it meets the criteria there. When she says, I am not a criminal, I have no doubt that this is a phrase that someone has told her. Because will you take a polygraph is one of those questions that interrogators ask. So we're seeing this response that I'm not a criminal. It came out instantaneously, and it was very articulate, and I think that was coached. But this sold me on the whole thing, that I think she has no doubt in her mind. So I'm a truth-seeking person. So I watch these videos looking for truth signals or the absence of truth signals. And I approach most of my interviews or interrogations and a lot of my training from that perspective. The moment I'm seeing this video of her saying absolutely, absolutely in response to those things, I may be around, probably around 90% now. At 90% of the conversation was truth indicators.
Yeah, so I'm more like 75 to 80%, and I've been on the fence. Certainly, I believe something happened. I'm not sure of the details. And the reason I'm not sure of the details is the details have evolved, and they're injects, and those injects into this conversation are different in their body language, and that could be because it's new information and injected, but it causes red flags for me. She brought me to 80 probably with the absolutely, I'll take this and I'll take that. So I'll say 75 to 80.
If I were looking or I were gambling on what I think the real agenda is, it's in 2 phrases that she says, and she tries to enforce on the interviewer and the audience, which is, she says, everything is politics, right? Then she also says that many things can be true at the same time. Everything is politics, and many things can be true at the same time.
And what I think's happened is we're seeing about, I'm with Chase and Greg too, I'm about 80, I might go to 87% of what we're seeing is truth. Where I'm seeing deception, or where she's redirecting and she's leaving out the details of the gory part. And I remember shows all the rehearsal in there. Then that micro expression where she's smiling right in the middle of when she's supposed to be crying. The worst part of the whole thing where she has that smile. That's what makes me feel like it's she's trying to get back at him. That's what I think is the crux of this whole thing is it's sort of revenge thing, although she's being honest about most of it. I mean, almost all of it. Those are the places I'm seeing deception on my part.
My goal is to look for the truth signals, and then after I see the truth signals, look for deviations from the truth. So when we're talking about what she says, I definitely think something happened to her. I just don't think that all the story is there. It's either there's deviation, something else happened, maybe somebody else was involved as well. But I do feel like, based on how she presents herself and the words she uses, that there's more to this story. And I think that one of the most important things, and you're right, we can never ask somebody to come on and be interviewed by, say, one of you guys, right? But at the same time, it would be nice if one of us could be in the ear of the interviewer and say, okay, wait, this is the next question you should ask. Because otherwise, we're never really going to know the truth. If they don't know the proper questions to follow up on, all we're getting really is what their narrative is.
Walking away from that interview, do you believe her?
Well, I don't really want to comment on what I believe, just because I want to continue reporting on the case, and I don't think it's necessary to say what my personal belief is, because who really cares? I will say this, having spoken now to Tara's main corroborating witness, the woman we called Karen, I believe that Tara told Karen this happened to Tara at the time it did. Now, that doesn't answer whether, in fact, it happened. I don't know Tara. I don't know why she would have told Karen this happened if it hadn't happened, but we have seen that kind of thing happen in the past.
And I think there are lots of people in his party, of course, who would like to believe him, but given the position they've staken out on this issue, can they?
Yeah. I mean, see, I think that's okay. I think all along I have felt, whether it was my own accusation against my old boss at Fox, or it was Christine Blasey Ford, or it's Tara Reid, that it is up to the voter or the viewer to decide. And it's up to us as journalists to tell the story fairly.
When you're doing this interview, how cognizant are you that members of the media are going to try and write you off by saying, well, she's still got that Fox News blood in her, she's a conservative? Are you aware that they're going to do that, and does that make you extra tough in the interview?
No, I mean, I do all my interviews the same. I'm really just a lawyer at heart. I'm not on the side of Republicans, and I'm not on the side of Democrats. I am on the side of truth. And I think I have a career that supports that. Listen, I'm all for more examination of it. And, I respect even the people who say, I believe her, but I'm still going to vote for Joe Biden.
All right, is Joe Biden running for president? Yes, I am. I'm running for president. Is Joe Biden going to win? As my grandfather would say, the grace of God, the goodwill of the neighbors, and the creek not rising, yes, I'm going to win. Is Joe Biden a billionaire? Unfortunately, I'm not. Okay, is Joe Biden religious? I do not proselytize, but I'm a practicing Catholic, yes. Is Joe Biden a vegan? No, Joe Biden's not a vegan, although my wife is pushing me. Most of the meals I eat, quite frankly, don't have meat. A lot of chicken, a fair amount of fish. I'm big on ice cream. So after all these years, it's very disappointing to be known for two things, my Ray-Bans and ice cream. It's pretty dull. Does Joe Biden have a law degree? Yes, I do. I have a law degree from Syracuse University, and I practiced law for a while here in Delaware. Did Joe Biden ever have a job? Yeah, I've had a job. I used to be a lifeguard for years. And when I ran for the United States Senate, they said, well, why do you want a 29-year-old guy who's only been a lifeguard? Well, the truth was I was a practicing lawyer. I've been a public defender, and I had my own small law firm. But I got elected when I was 29, and then I had another job, although I guess people don't consider being a senator a job, but that was my other job. Was Joe Biden in a fraternity? No, I never joined a fraternity. Is Joe Biden an actor? You can tell by this, no, Joe Biden's not an actor. I'm not very good at playing anything but myself. I used to be a very bad stutterer when I was a kid and all through high school, but I've always felt self-conscious about trying to be something that I wasn't, and that acting requires you to be able to do that. Okay, what is Joe Biden's immigration policy? Keep families together. Immigration built this country. We're all, with the exception of the original sin of slavery, we're all immigrants. It's the reason why we're the great country we are. We've been able to cherry pick the best of every culture in the world. For someone to come here, like my great-great-grandfather getting on a coffin ship in the Irish Sea back in 1848, it took courage, it took optimism, it took determination. That's why we're who we are. We're a nation of immigrants and proud of it. What is Joe Biden's plan for improving the economy? You know, there used to be a basic bargain in America. If you contributed to the well-being of the operation you work for, you got to share in the benefits. That's changed in the last 20 years. Because of corporate greed, because of a range of other things, and because of, particularly now in this administration, the way in which it doesn't take care of people who bust their neck. My dad used to say, everyone is entitled to be treated with dignity. And how can you have dignity if you're working 40 hours a week and you can't afford health care? You can't afford to take care of your children. You can't afford housing. That's the reason I'm running for president, because I'm going to change that. We're going to rebuild the middle class, and this time bring everybody along. What is Joe Biden's view on education? My wife, Jill, has a great expression. She's a doctor of education, and she's been a teacher for years. And she'd say, any country that out-educates us will out-compete us. And so that's why I strongly believe we should, at both ends of the spectrum, change it so that every child, 3, 4, and 5 years old, can go to school. School, not daycare, school. And all the studies show that increases exponentially their chance of success. And at the other end of it, we should have free community college, free college for 4 years of college of a state university if you come from a family making less than $125,000. And we should be investing in apprenticeships across the board. We can do anything when we put our minds to it. We are really not following the law very well these days. What's Joe Biden's stance on gun control? Number one, assault weapons are weapons of death. They have no rationale for being owned by individuals on the street. They should be outlawed. They were eliminated. They came back after a 10-year elimination of them. From the very beginning, you weren't allowed to have certain weapons. You weren't allowed to own a cannon during the Revolutionary War as an individual. Anybody think you should be able to go out and have a machine gun these days? And the answer is no. We have a rational policy. No amendment to the Constitution is absolute. Secondly, everyone should have a universal background check in order to determine whether they're capable of owning a weapon, whether they should own a weapon. Tell the truth and let the cards fall where they may. Why would you want the job unless you did that? I hope that the blinders have been taken off here, so we got to unite the country. Thank you.
Friday hit a low. Soon after we sneaked across the rooftops in pursuit of the moon. All our libido leaking through our fingers and lips, surprisingly so soon. And when rain came down on us, the weather wouldn't get us wet, 'cause we took shelter in each other's arms. And desire comes to an end, the elements would not forget. In